Welcome back to another edition of the Fried Egg Golf Podcast. I am your host, Andy Johnson. Today, we are going to talk Royal County Down and the Irish Open. I am pleased to be joined by Darragh Garrahy. He is a friend of mine that I met longtime, emailer and communicator, but we met when I was in Ireland earlier this year, played some golf together, and he is he's a diehard when it comes to golf architecture, golf history, and knows just a ton about golf on the island of Ireland. So I figured he'd be a great guest to come on and talk about Royal County Down, didn't disappoint. He came prepared, ready to go. We talked about one of the world's greatest golf courses and this week's Irish Open host. I figured this would be a great table setter for kind of, I would say, the last hurrah of pro golf this year. We got the P Cup coming up, the President's Cup coming up, but I think this Royal County Down this weekend. You obviously have the Solheim Cup at RTJ after, and we'll have an episode later this week that kind of centers on that. But I think the Irish Open and Royal County Down is it's going to deliver the goods for people that are really into golf courses and architecture. That'll be on Golf Channel early in the morning in the States all week. So check that out. Before we get to Darragh, let's talk a little bit about Club TFE. That is our sponsor of this pod. It's our membership. It's the Fried Eggs membership, and it's a bustling place. We're producing a lot of content. I'm actually working on a Royal County Down written profile. So every week we do a course profile in there where we go dive deep into a golf course. Last week we had one of our member videos that we put out, a couple of those every year. That was on Southern Pines. We have Design Notebook that comes out every Monday. That kind of talks about what's going on in the golf design world. So a ton of content. On top of that, there are discounts to the Pro Shop. And there are a handful of member-only events, maybe a few more. We've got some really awesome couple of add-ons that we've added that will be announced next week at some very good golf courses in America. Some would say probably a couple of the best golf courses in America. Those will go up next week. But really cool offering, and big thanks to everybody that's joined and supported us. It's $120 for the year, and it really goes to helping us continue to grow and do more stuff. So just check that out. And then one other reminder, I did a big video with the help of Cameron Hurtis on Royal County Down, talking about that. That's up on our free YouTube page. If you don't subscribe, check that out, subscribe, and watch that video. That was super fun to see come to life. Cameron is unbelievable at putting those videos together. So let's get to Darragh and our talk about Royal County Down. Darragh, it's Irish Open week. This is a great year of the Irish Open. Gone is Mount Juliet for this year, and Royal County Down is the host course. Hasn't hosted in almost a decade, and this will be really I think in terms of modern golf coverage between social media, HD cameras. This is really kind of the coming out party for Royal County Down in the modern golf viewing era with social media. So what are a few of your favorite things about the Irish Open?
Andy, so much to say. What a week it's going to be. Just reflecting on the week. First of all, I saw you've put the Irish Open up as your event of the week on your various social media outlets. I'm going to push back a little. I'm going to say the Crump Cup is on in Pine Valley. So between the Pine Valley and Royal County Down being showcased, I just think it's going to be an incredible week in golf. Obviously, we can't watch Pine Valley, so I'm going to go up to Royal County Down on Saturday, and I just can't wait to see it. With the
you're going up, huh?
Oh yeah, I'm going up on. So I went to the Saturday in 2015 as well, and I'm going to be up on Saturday this year again. The weather was pretty bad in 2015, I think there was some pretty high scores on the Saturday I was up there, or maybe it was the Friday, but I can't wait to go up. Just with, the golf schedule since the PGA Championship moved, I think, Andy, from August to July or August to May, everything wraps up so quickly in terms of major events on great courses. It seems to wrap up the end of July. We get a premature end. So we've just been blessed this year with this wonderful closing chapter in Royal County Down. So I wouldn't miss it for anything. It's going to be spectacular. It's going to be firm. The weather's been good here for the last week or so, but I just saw a picture today of Shane Lowry in Portrush with some mitts on, so it can change, but at least there should be some firmness in it unless it gets it dousing. But the Irish Open is, as you said, returning to a links course. We're spiritual home. We're so charmed. It's, the heyday of the Irish Open was the 1970s and 1980s, played mainly on Portmarnock, occasional smatterings in Royal Dublin. And they were just brilliant events. 1986 to 1990, I think, Seve won, then Bernard Langer won, then Woozy went back-to-back, and then I think it was Olathable won in 1990. Huge crowds. Those days maybe slightly gone. We know all the commercial concerns that go around hosting a tournament, and we can't always go to top-tier links, and you've talked so much about that. But just to be able to go back even once this year, it's just amazing, and I can't wait to see it. And I hope everyone in America gets to watch some of it as well.
I think like one of the interesting things about the Irish Open is having, our visit to Ireland this spring kind of illuminated how great the amateur championships are in Ireland.
Yeah.
Whether it's the North, the South, the East, the West, and the courses, the host courses, Royal Portrush. Baltray, County Louth, and Lahinch is a host. And you get these great amateur championships, which anybody can enter. You can enter as an American, you can enter as an Australian, play these great links courses. But then, in recent years, the Irish Open, we've had Mount Juliet. We get the kind of interior, the interior non-links golf courses, and I think from a standpoint of pro golf, I think venues matter a lot. And when John Rahm won at Lahinch years ago, it was like an amazing win, right? It was just like an amazing tournament, everything. This event needs to be held at the great golf courses in Ireland. It's a showcase for the island. Of Ireland, speaking of as the island as a whole for golf. I think that's generally the premise there. But these should be hosted around, and it should be a big deal winning the Irish Open at Portmarnock or Lahinch or wherever it may be. And I just hope that this trend kind of continues in the next couple decades of getting places like I'm sure Royal County Down probably wants to host about once every 10 years, but there could, with a little planning, you could do an awesome rotation of 10 or so courses in Ireland. Would you agree with that?
I would. You've mentioned so many interesting points there. I think, as you said, RCD probably and any top links course are so filled with visitors now, and obviously they're private members clubs, that there is a limitation on when they can host. So we should say thanks to Royal County Down, first of all. And you picked up on the love of Irish people have for amateur golf and the great courses that host those tournaments. And they are it's an over and above love for amateur golf that we have here. And we're so lucky they are in great golf courses. But the history of the Irish Open, as you mentioned there, it's coming up on 100 years now. So 1927, and the first one was in Portmarnock, and the second one was in Royal County Down. And obviously times have changed so much since then, but we've only got these smatterings of hostings in Portrush or in Lahinch that John Rahm won. Like when I was growing up as a kid, one of my standout memories is, and you mentioned Mount Juliet earlier, and the Irish Open, and interestingly enough, when the European Tour was actually becoming quite strong, in we'll say the 90s and 2000s, that's when the Irish Open moved, for obviously commercial reasons and then other reasons, from the likes of Portmarnock and Royal Dublin to Druids Glen to Killarney to Fota Island, and occasionally dip back into Baltray, and then in later years Portrush, etc. But I remember going to Ballybunion in about 2000 with my dad. He brought me down. It was probably the first golf tournament I'd ever been at. I was 10 years of age, and that just resonated so hard with me. I'd never seen a links golf course in my life. It probably played a large reason into why I really got into golf after that. I'd only started playing golf. And as you say, if we could even occasionally lock something in, given the great courses that we have, the Port Stewarts, not to mention the Big Five or the Big Six, it would add so much to world golf. And given all the discussions that are going on, it's particularly pertinent, I think. I would say that things were going particularly well, Andy, pre-COVID with the Irish Open, the Rolex Series. There was a lot of money being pumped in, and we went back to back, I think, in Lahinch and Portrush. So that was, and I think unfortunately, obviously, COVID happened and the European Tour position weakened. But you never know what's around the corner, and I think that if there's anything the tours can do to come around to this idea of having a links swing, and Ireland has so much to offer in terms of the best courses. There's a lot of interesting discourse now around Liv. Have obviously said there was chat about John Ram wanting a links event in Ireland before the British Open. So I think it should be to the forefront of everyone's minds. We have too much good stuff to offer, and everyone's going to see it this weekend in County Down.
Yeah, you hit on an interesting point of the future of the Irish Open, and we'll get to Royal County Down after this. But I think one of the things you watch what's going on with the potential Saudi Public Investment Fund PGA Tour deal, and lack of progress on the deal. I think like one of the big things that's a sticking point of the deal is a world tour. A little bit more of a global game where the best players in the world travel around to the biggest golf markets in the world. The Irish Open would seemingly be a linchpin to that world tour. And it is probably, along with the Scottish Open and Wentworth behind, the Open Championship as the premier worldwide event. I think like the Australian Open you'd throw in there also. But, if a deal doesn't happen and maybe the Saudis look at the European Tour more closely, this event, to me, if you were going to, do like a stock exchange for golf events, this event seems to have the most potential of becoming a great event again. Yeah,
that's just such a brilliant point. Like, firstly, obviously the Scottish Open occupies, I think, currently the slot before the Open Championship, and Scotland has an unbelievable amount to offer in terms of classic golf courses and indeed Renaissance, etc. But the Irish economy is booming. There's no shortage of sponsors. The Irish links to America in particular are strong. There's a precedent for the Irish Open being a really, really great event. Like Ben Crenshaw used to come over in the mid-70s when nobody was coming over. It was record crowds at these Irish Opens. We're a natural midpoint between everyone that's involved in all these negotiations in this game. And as you say, I'm not down on the Irish Open at all. I think it's got huge promise to come, Andy. I really do. I think that the Irish Open should really be agitating for a more premier spot in the calendar. I did start this podcast by saying September is preeminent in terms of conditioning for a links course, and of course it is. But any top pro would love to be in Ireland the week before an Open or 2 weeks before. Courses around Ireland, as you've obviously seen on social media, have no shortage of top pros coming to prepare anyway privately.
You know who's one of them that goes to Ireland every year before the Open?
Go on.
Tiger.
Well, yeah, Tiger. There's a great picture of Tiger in must be maybe 98 or 99 playing Portmarnock. And some of the guys who are obviously in the club watched him play that day, and only about 5 or 6 people watched him play in this. It was absolutely incredible. But I've seen Dustin Johnson out a couple of times, and lots of other guys come because, for example, obviously I play in Portmarnock, so I'm a little bit biased, but Portmarnock is as firm and as kind of intricate as it gets. It's very similar to a lot of the style of golf played on certain open venues like Muirfield. But we have so much to offer. We have occupied that kind of top spot in world golf in terms of our Open in the history of our National Open. And the National Opens are so important, and the Irish Open is really to the top of those, Andy. So something that's dear to my heart, and I'd love to see it get a better position, and I think it's very well primed too.
I think, we brought up the Scottish Open. One of the things that the Scottish Open struggles with is venues, because, the great championship venues are kind of wrapped into the Open rota, right? and they aren't looking necessarily to host a Scottish Open. So what happens with the Scottish Open, and these are still great golf courses, just not the country's top tier golf courses. The Scottish Open goes to places like Gullin and Renaissance, versus your Muirfields, your Troons, your great championship hosts. The thing that Ireland has is that it is never, I don't think it's ever outside of like Portrush, and it's never going to be a hub of Open Championship golf, because the Open is it's just not the Irish Open. So the Irish Open has this opportunity of we can get the greatest golf courses of Ireland to host.
Absolutely. And obviously there's been a little bit of discussion recently about Portmarnock maybe putting its hand up for bigger events and whatever. But while all that's going on in the background, there are so many golf courses that could put their hand up. Baltray would be only too willing. There's places like Ballyliffin, which are obviously hard to get to.
Yeah.
But Lahinch was such a success. Ballybunion, that I went to in 2000 or maybe 2001. I think it was 2000. I remember watching Garcia. And that was what really got me enthralled with golf, I think. But we are perfectly situated for all this. And as you said, we're not in the same situation as Scotland is, with all the open road courses. So we have a completely blank slate. And it's just, the world is our oyster. And I really do think it's going to happen quite soon. And I think that the negotiations that are going on probably will have a very positive outlook, or positive end result for Ireland in all this. And I think I just thought the live chatter was quite interesting. I think that'll bubble up and keep bubbling. I think that if they were to look for venues, they would probably find that under the surface they have 8 or 10 brilliant golf courses in Ireland that they could host a brilliant event on the week before the Open. And that'll pique people's interest, Andy. So,
all right, let's talk about this week's brilliant venue, Royal County Down.
Staggeringly brilliant. Just
arguably the best course in Ireland, on the island of Ireland. Arguably the best golf course in the world. People would put that in there. It is. I think like it's a golf course that you can. I don't think anybody could visit and be like, you know what, not my cup of tea, because it kind of offers everything from staggering beauty, challenge. There is like in a sense of adventure to the golf course, and I think there's a very brilliant golf design. So you kind of package all of that together. People might like one course more than another. Somebody might like Portrush more. Someone might like Portmarnock more. Someone might like Lahinch more. But I don't think it's a golf course many people go to and say, I wish I hadn't come up here. This was overrated, or this is too much. What is your personal history? When was the first time that you visited Royal County Down, and what stood out to you?
I went to Dublin, college in Dublin, and played on the university golf team. And I still have photos I took on a low megapixel camera of, we were lucky enough to play against a university in the north of Ireland who had playing rights at Royal County Down, or just the ability to host matches. And it was March 2009, the timestamp says. And the Mourne Mountains were snow-capped. But I don't think they cared too much about frost up in Royal County Down back then. So I still have all these pictures of my opponent going down the fairway, who was a good player who beat me. But I couldn't believe I was playing Royal County Down. I'd read about it for so long. And with the whole place to ourselves, it was absolutely freezing. And he's along with his mitts and his hat. And I, like any golf course, I really didn't get a sense of it on first play. I was overawed by it. I did play a couple of more university matches there. But then I went back many more times. I have a particularly good friend there who actually won the club championship there a couple of weeks ago for the first time. So well done to Jack. But I went back many times with him, and indeed then with other pals. And it's less than 2 hours up the road from Portmarnock. And it's a truly great golf course. Like, I've given up on golf course rankings, and they're one of the most useless things I think ever. I like to bucket golf courses, and County Down is so far to the top of the top tier bucket. It's just it's a truly great golf course because it has so many great golf holes. That's what a great golf course has to have, great golf holes. And Royal County Down has, 12 plus truly brilliant golf holes. And as much as I was just talking with my friend who won the club championship, but I'll never admit to him when we're texting each other about County Down being better than where I play in Portmarnock or whatever. But there is just so much good going on that even if you think that the last 3 holes are overrated or there's some contrivation about the new 16th, or you think the 17th is weak, which I don't think. I'd love to chat about that. The last 3 holes, I think the 17th actually is a great green side. But County Down is just all about the terrain. The various people involved in shaping it throughout the years never tried to make too much of the greens. They didn't put bells and whistles on. They're perfect for the land they occupy. It's staggeringly beautiful. And it might be perhaps the most natural top tier course in the world, I think. Because there's nothing, it's got foibles, but it's all about the terrain. It's just perfectly put along the terrain. But it was quite a journey to get there. I don't know if you want to go into it, but it resembles nothing like the golf course that was there in kind of 1889 when it started to 1926 when Harry Colt came. But that briefly, sorry, to answer your original question, that's my history with it. I've played it so many times, and it's a joy to go up there every single time. I find it to be an incredibly hard golf course, which is why at the outset of this pod, I was laughing at the idea of the Crump Cup in Pine Valley and the Irish Open in County Down, because it is a really, really difficult golf course. Even in 1908 or 1907, I think it was 6,400 yards. But it started in, if you're happy to keep going, it started in 1890.
I was gonna jump in here and just
go ahead.
I think like a couple of things that you hit on. There are I don't know of any golf course that has as many overwhelmingly great golf holes.
Truly brilliant. So many of them.
It's absurd. You can nitpick. There are a couple weak moments in the round. But in terms of any golf course in the world that I've played, there is no golf course that if you just were what are the greatest golf holes in the world? I don't think any golf course would have as many in that initial list, because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you just go the whole front nine, the entire front nine. Is there another golf course in the world that has as good of 9 holes? Any 9, any 9 you want to pick. No. You could go 1, 7, 14. You could pick your best 9. I don't know if there's any 9 that is as good as the front 9 at Royal County Down.
Not even close. Is there any course in the world where I think the first hole is magnificent, but you walk down the first hole like you walk down every hole, every first hole. But what you should do in first to County Down is turn around and look back up the fairway, because it's staggeringly brilliant to just look back on. And then, you get to the second, and I'm not a great lover of blind holes, but they don't bother me in Royal County Down at all, because there's some sort of a compression or release almost aspect to the second hole, the tee shot, because even though it's a blind shot, which you may or may not like, it's up to your personal preference, but it's so wide when you get over the hill that it's so different, it's so wide, and it just gives so many options. And that second, obviously the approach to the second can be blind depending on where you've hit your tee shot if you pull it left, but that used to be, I think, in different stages, that was a completely blind approach shot as well.
Yeah, they knocked down the dune ridge. It went all the way across.
Precisely. And they knocked down the dune ridge. So I think at various points they knocked that down, but they also attempted to build up the back of the green. But then, the first 3 holes kind of play out like a classic links, but obviously then it turns on itself at 4. And when you get these golf courses in Britain and Ireland that play out and in, even though County Down doesn't, but the first 3 holes play out, and they often have a sense of claustrophobia, I find, but there's just none of that. There's a sense of space, as I said about the release on the second. There's a great sense of space down the third, which is one of the best holes. I absolutely love the third. But you'd be so hard picked to pick your favourite holes. If I asked you to pick your 3 favourite holes in the front nine of County Down, we could be here all day and all night. I think I'd probably go I have a soft spot for 8. I hope
8's amazing.
8 is amazing, and it used to. It used to play. It played down to the left.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and we'll come on to that. I'll go through that. But
No, we can't go now. We're here now.
Oh,
So.
okay. Great. Okay. Well, maybe I'll work back. So I think the golf course. I'll do it in stages. I'll do it properly. So the golf course, 1889, rudimentary course laid out, resembled nothing like the current course. And then Old Tom Morris came 3 months after it was opened and suggested changes. And they built 3 new holes and 6 new holes. So very suddenly, done by 1890, there was 18 holes. And the golf course, and you alluded to the Irish love of amateur golf earlier, immediately the golf course was hosting Irish Amateur Opens, where the great players from the UK were coming over, John Ball and all these type of characters. And then there was some pro events even, and I think Hilton and Braid might have been coming over as well. So it was immediately a championship golf. Go ahead.
One of the things about the early golf course was, and how this golf course, people came to play it, was that the first and 18th green were right next to a train station.
Yeah. So what had happened there was, like all good golf, like all golf in Britain and Ireland, the train line dictated the development of the golf course. And the Belfast Railway made the stop in Newcastle, which is the village of County Down beside it, made that a terminus kind of maybe a few years before. And they were so in lockstep with each other, the golf course and indeed the town and the train station, that we'll say the government / train station and Royal County Down actually came together to build a room for the use of golfers at the train station. That's how in lockstep. Yeah, and they I think they maybe paid half and half for the upkeep of it, was shared, etc. And you're right, like I think the original home green, the 18th green, was down on the current side of the Slieve Donard Hotel. So you're right, it started way further down, finished further down, and it bore no resemblance to the current golf course at all. So this is 1890. And then again, between 1892 and 1894, they rebuilt 6 new holes in and got rid of some others. So we've had 3 or 4 already major iterations of the golf course, and we're only 4.5 years in. And then, like all great golf courses, Andy, there was a benevolent dictator. Like there was, the more I think about it, so many great golf courses, mainly in America, have been shaped by benevolent autocrats. And there was Fownes at Oakmont, and even in later years, Gerald Micklem made good changes at Sunningdale. But there was a guy called George Coombe, and he was first noted to be around in the early 1890s. But he was a gentleman of boundless energy. You found these people at the time who could turn their hand to anything, and he gained a prominent position in Royal County Down on the council, I think it's called. They call their committee. And he started changing the course, I think, in earnest in about 1900. He built many new holes and he changed the rest. So there's only 6 original holes left of the original golf course. And the golf course is up to 5,800 yards. But descriptions of that course don't really exist. There's kind of yardages, etc. But at the same time, he was also building the number 2 course, the Annesley course, or the number 2 course.
The week course.
The week course. So he was a busy guy. He was honorary secretary of the Golfing Union of Ireland, and he did all sorts. But anyway, he wasn't a complete autocrat. He got many people who he knew understood golf architecture to come over and have a look. He had Ben Sayers actually come over. And then he would carry out more changes, and he even paid for some of the changes out of his own pocket. So 2 more big changes, tranche of changes, the kind of 1902 changes that he started in 1900, and then by 1908 he'd done it again. So we have big golf course, 6,400 yards. And then obviously the most important thing that happened was that Harry Colt came over in 1926. And this is just where the genius of County Down and the genius of Harry Colt comes out. And in a nutshell, what Harry Colt did was, first of all, he planted all the gorse. There was no gorse in County Down before Harry Colt. So the 4th hole, as we know it, one of the most awe-inspiring par 3s in the world. You've just got beaten up by the 3rd, and you step onto the 4th tee, and you're looking around trying to take it all in, and then you got to pick up a 200-yard club and hit down to just one of the best golf holes in the world. But what Harry Colt did was that the old 4th hole was a hole that played in parallel, went back up beside the 3rd, up to kind of around the current 5th green. So it was a 520-yard hole that kind of played along the rough corridor of what he built, where the current 4th is, and the current 5th. So he knocked that hole out, the 3-shotter, and put in the dogleg right 5th, but more importantly, the 4th. So immediately Harry Colt was always on the lookout for good par 3s. I think that's how when he was called to Portrush, that's really what he did up there as well. He looked for the best sites for par 3s, is what I understand, and then he worked off the rest. And that was his first change on the front nine at County Down. So he actually reduced, it's hard to believe, but he reduced blindness around the golf course as well. So we can only imagine the demands of the pre-Colt iteration.
Well, I mean, the site itself is naturally conducive to blindness. You have massive, dramatic sand dunes. I think, like, in terms of golf course, but they're well scaled sand dunes. I think, like, the thing that people will say is like, oh, the front nine at Port Stewart is as good as the front nine at Royal County Down. And I just disagree, because the variety of the way that you interact with the sand dunes is the brilliance of Royal County Down, is that you're playing through them. And I think, like, Port Stewart I love that 9, but the dunes are so big that you can't play on top of them in the way that you play on top of them on 6, 7, and 8 at Royal County Down. You miss that, like, playing on the exposed center of it. At Port Stewart, you're always playing through them. So what I think the brilliance of the Colt iteration is the way that it interacts on the dunes. The way it gets you kind of wrap around them, play in them, and then you get on them, and then you play off them.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it like that. You're absolutely spot on. He obviously probably reduced playing through them on the first few holes, and then made the best of them up on 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. What I understand is George Coombe as well, our favorite benevolent dictator, also kind of reduced blindness. I think the first few holes genuinely played just straight over and through dunes. That probably was not in the best way to play certain holes. So I think Coombe had already started laying out the original playing corridors that the holes occupy. And by the time he was done in about 1908, the 1st and the 18th were par 5s. So they were 3-shotters, and the playing corridors were established. And then Colt obviously came in, and as you've just so eloquently said, utilized playing off the dunes and the slopes rather than egregious playing over them so perfectly. I think that's probably the fairest way to describe it. But I do think that this golf course, modern version of it, owes an awful lot to George Coombe. But then what Colt did was, this is just the current 8th, which is just one of my favorite golf course, one of my favorite holes on the golf course. It's just, at that time, that was the 7th, and it played.
So the 8th plays up along the ridge. It's, the 9th, you'll see everybody takes pictures of the 9th. The 8th is where it gets you to the 9th tee. And I think it's probably one of the least talked about great holes at Royal County Down. It kind of plays on a diagonal off the tee and winds its way up to the top of the dune ridge.
Yeah. And I think so.
Big par 4. Most exposed shots maybe at Royal County Down.
Yeah, and kind of a tabletop green almost, falls off on the right anyway. But what Colt did was, that, as I was just saying, so that was the 7th hole, and it used to finish down into the left, almost near the current first green, I'd imagine, in my head. And then from there, you played from down near that original green. You played back over at an angle over the current hill that the 9th is so well known for, in a blind par 3. And then you would go from behind that green, and you would play over another sand hill that was there at the time to another green around the current 9th green. So you had 2 blind par 3s. Is that practice green an original green? It feels like it might have been the green. You are correct, but I don't think that was actually the green for that just previously mentioned second blind par 3, which occupied. I think that was the green for another hole that was there in a more previous iteration in one of the. It could have been an old Tom. It could have been an old Tom green. I think it could have. Because I actually was just checking that last night. I don't think there was. I don't think the second blind par 3 played to that, because it played to a green in Sand Hills, which is currently gone, which is gone in the meantime. So I think the practice green, which certainly was a real green, was for a different hole. But what he did then was, so he obliterated that. He moved the 8th green up, or with the 7th hole at the time, up to the right onto this magnificent tabletop. And then you just walk from, obviously, so many of your listeners will know exactly where the 9th tee is, then straight behind the current 8th green, and you play the magnificent 9th. So Harry Colt created the modern 8, the modern 9th, and indeed the modern 4th, which is just pure genius. But he did it all through the corridors, which were previously established after about 7 or 8 goes from all our variously mentioned pals. But, where to start about the front 9, it's an endless hit list, really, I think, Andy. So, but that was Harry Colt.
Yeah, Harry Colt. Obviously, I think I recorded a pod years ago with Curtis James, who's the superintendent at Old Elm. Harry Colt, one of the few Harry Colts in North America, and he said, I think that it's brilliantly is most Americans don't really know much about Harry Colt, but if you go over to the UK, he's like Jesus.
Yeah, for a period of time, as a screensaver on my phone was the par 3, the 4th hole at Swinley Forest, which I just couldn't get over. It's just so brilliant. I don't know. I don't think you've ever played Swinley.
I have not yet.
There's that silly old quote that he called it his least bad course, but it's a brilliant monument. What was that the quote they said about Portrush? Tim, he doesn't need a brass statue because Portrush is his monument. So
I think what he did at Portrush is so different than at Royal County Down. I think at the green, I think completely. The greens are pretty simple at Royal County Down. But then you go to Portrush, and they are like these beautiful, intricate greens with like some really wonderful contouring, different pockets. But Royal County Down, I think what do you think makes Royal County Down so challenging? Because I think it's like from a sheer challenge right there with Portrush. Like I would almost venture to say that Royal County Down might be more challenging than Portrush.
I think Royal County Down is way more challenging than Portrush. But first of all, it was a guy called Anthony Babington who brought Colt to Portrush, and again, they had a very rudimentary golf course. But I think that was Colt's genius. He recognised that the topography of Portrush, obviously, it was rolling in a sense. I wouldn't describe Royal County Down as rolling, and he created the greens a little bit more in a rolling fashion. Whereas if you think about the 3rd hole at Royal County Down, if I was to be laconic in my language, I would say that 2 good shots will sort you out at the 3rd at County Down, because when you get there, the green is relatively open, simple, somewhat inviting, but the challenge is before. And Colt knew that, so that's part of his genius. There's no overdoing it. We talked about Simpson and his restraint at Baltray. But really, I suppose your question was, why do I think it's so challenging? I think that it is very, very broad. It's so beastly in every term that the rough is absolutely brutal at times. The gorse planted by Colt as well. I know last time I was up there was about a year ago, and they'd cut back some of the gorse, but it's an incredibly challenging golf course. And there are many parallels to Pine Valley with the strength of the tee shots. If you hit it 5 or 10 yards right on the 3rd, which is again 400 yards plus, there's deep bunkers that I don't think, for example, when Americans come over here, I don't think they've ever played out of the surrounds of a bunker like they played out at the 3rd hole on the fairway of Royal County Down. You can take 5 or 6 swipes at something that's caught up in that marram grass and be there all day. There is nothing like that challenge anywhere in the world, really. Andy, I think the amount of trouble you can get yourself in between green and tee is unrivaled in world golf. I really do.
Yeah. I think like from first glance, it doesn't feel that demanding off the tee. Like there's space.
There is.
But when you throw in the wind and the especially firm conditions and wind, it becomes like very clear that it is you need to drive it extraordinarily well here.
Yeah, like if you look at, and obviously just to bring it up again, I played my golf at Portmarnock, and Portmarnock appears kind of tight off the tee, but if you miss it left or right, you're generally okay. But there's no marram grass with the volume and the texture like there is at Royal County Down. You can be up against the base of a hill on the third at Royal County Down if you hit a long drive up the left. You think you've done all the hard part perfectly.
Not a good spot.
Yeah, you can be to use your
been there twice.
To use your parlance, you can be jammed hard. So
did not enjoy it over there.
Yeah, there's all the other golf courses in Ireland. If you hit a good long drive, you're generally okay. But golf is natural, and it's not supposed to be fair. So I think this is where County Down wins out. Same can be said of the fifth hole, for example, which is a lovely dogleg. It used to have a square green, actually. I saw a picture from 1934 the other day. It used to have a perfectly square green, almost like the Philly Cricket Club, the second course there.
St. Martin's.
St. Martin's, yeah, which had a US Open, I think. But if you miss any of these fairways, even though you said the playing corridors are wide, they are wide, but they're a different character off the fairway than they are at Portmarnock or Portrush or Lahinch, for example. Very, very different. Lahinch has contouring and undulation like Royal County Down, but its penalties for missing the fairways are more consistent with the type of rough that you see across Ireland, which can be a decent blend of fescue, but there is marram grass, I think, Andy, to answer your question about the difficulty of Royal County Down that's not appreciated anywhere else on the island. That's what I'd run it back to.
I feel like, if I was going to use a descriptor for Royal County Down and why I find it to be difficult, so tough, is like it's like a raw golf.
Yeah,
like,
it is.
You just are like the elements, and whether it be on the ground elements like the dunes and the contours you're facing, like you have these big features, but then in the fairways there are a lot of small features that kind of can get you in bad spots and feel uncomfortable, where you have like slight side hills and you're hitting into these small green targets and the wind's blowing hard, but it's just like a very raw place to play golf. You are just, you're not going out there. You're like going out there and you're going, it's almost like you feel like you're going to war with just the place.
But that's exactly it. Earlier on when we were chatting, I said, I think it's the best natural golf course in the world. And I really thought about that phrase because that's what it is. There is just so little manufactured about it. And there's other golf courses that are in the top bucket that just don't feel like that. I think County Down is completely unique in how natural it is. That's why,
I might say, I think when you get off the 15th hole, you kind of leave that. And that might be why people don't love the last three holes.
Okay.
Is that I think it loses the plot on the naturalness a little bit.
Okay. They're oft discussed. I think the best one to start with is 17. I hear a lot of people knock 17. And I actually quite like 17. I really like the green.
I'd say that's the best of the three finishers.
It is, but I actually think it's quite a good hole. And now, obviously, I'm not sure if you ever saw pictures or whatever, but there used to be a pond in the middle of the 17th.
Yeah, it was like a natural spring, right?
It was a natural spring, I think. And now maybe there was drainage issues, but they filled it in and they have a waste area there. But it's an odd waste area. You don't have anything that looks anything like it for 16 holes and on the vast majority of the week course. Yeah, and I suppose,
and then you just like come up on this like very it feels very made, and it doesn't feel natural. But I think like the tee shot there and the approach are extremely high caliber shots. It's just weird pit in the fairway.
Yeah. And to play devil's advocate for a second, at least I suppose some people would say it's not a binary hazard. You can recover from it, etc. And maybe they had some sort of drainage issues, Andy. But I actually quite liked the old pond because there was nothing like it. It was offering an unusual challenge insofar as it was saying, can you hit the ball this far, or if you hit a little bit further, you'll pay the penalty. And there's not that many first of all, in County Down, there's very little of that challenge. Obviously, all approach shots are that challenge. But in the world golf, there's very few challenges like that left where someone is asking you to actually hit the ball a certain distance off the tee with a wood club. So that was kind of unusual in this day of bomb and gouge, where you were being asked to just consider a little bit of restraint because you were faced with a binary, 1-shot penalty or a 2-shot penalty or whatever. So I didn't really mind it. I do appreciate that it's easier to play the hole. But as you've said, I think the aesthetic is a little out of keeping. But, the green is just magnificent. The bunker on the right of the green, which I found myself in many times, is really hard to get out of. It's very narrow. Green has lovely cant from left to right. So I'm all in on the 17th. As I've said, I quite like the quirk of the pond. But I think the 16th is, and I've been trying to study it a little bit recently, the 16th is, for the listeners, is 335 40-yard par 4 that runs the same direction as the 15th and more or less the same direction as the 17th. In its place before was a hole, Andy, that was a very short drivable par 4. And it was changed for the Walker Cup in about winter 2005, 2006. So you used to come off the 15th green and go up left, and then you kind of played slightly across the new hole, kind of towards, almost towards the 17 tees. It was a simple hole, but, the interesting thing about simple holes is the 18th at St. Andrews is a simple golf hole, and it makes good players angry if they don't birdie it. So there's nothing wrong with a simple hole. And then, obviously, the views probably behind that, because that to the right of the 70 isn't exactly spectacular Mourne Mountain. So the views were probably an issue, and also the challenge for the Walker Cup and maybe pace of play on a 240-yard hole for the members every week was also probably slowed up. So in this winter of 2005, they changed that hole to make it this 340-yard hole playing kind of straight up. And
Donald Steele was the architect who built this hole.
It was Steele. And I love a good short par 4, but it's not quite drivable. I had a good go at it a couple of years ago. I suppose I would just say that I think it's limited in options off the tee. I think the layup is actually quite hard on the left, and it doesn't reward you that well because the green is still very hard to hit. You have to hit a deadly pitch to hold the green. And almost I think maybe when it was built, there was a kind of a separate fairway down on the right, which is actually the optimum place to kind of approach from, so that the green is then up on your left. But that's been grown in by rough. And I think there's a couple of bunkers there. So in reality, you're kind of forced up the left a little bit. So if I was playing it week in, week out, I would never go for it. I think that the layup on the left is actually into quite a small area. And I just think that, maybe, and it's a very, very tricky green. It'd be so interesting to be there at the time to see if they could have retained the original 16th hole, because the green was down and right. There's all these sort of questions after, but it's a very tricky drivable par 4 that doesn't give me too many options in my head. So if I was playing it week in, week out, I'd probably kind of be dragging out the 5-iron and hitting it up the left. So I don't know what your take on it is.
It's probably my least favorite hole out there. Okay. I think maybe, I don't know if repulse is the right word, but what bothers me the most is the green and the homogeneous bunkering.
Okay. The deep
just
bunkering.
the two fronting bunkers that are almost symmetrical. It was like they were just like copy and pasted. Okay. To me, the golf course, it's very clear. I think this is probably, the worst thing when you do renovation work on a historic golf course is like that hole, you get to it and it's very clear that that's not an original golf hole. Like whether you read something or not, like it's like, okay, this has been changed because the bunkering and everything just screams 1990s, It
Yeah,
is,
yeah,
and I think that this is my same complaint with the 18th. Um, it's just
yeah,
over bunkered. There's bunkers everywhere. They're seemingly formulaic in appearance. They just checker the right and left sides of the fairways all the way down the hole. And I think,
yeah.
like, to me, that hole, the 16th, if you took away the front right bunker, would be way better.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, okay, if I take this on, I have a path to the green. But if I play left, then I have to go over the bunker.
Well, so
Um,
this, yeah, like you're the real golf architecture expert here. But what
I
I
don't
always
know
thought about
about
that
it.
hole was, what I always thought about that hole was, I'd love the option to be able to chip a ball up or run a ball up from
Yeah.
from the right. Um, it's links golf, and I'd love to be able to run a ball on hard turf if I hit a nicely placed shot down the right, up the green. That would just give me so much enjoyment. So you're focusing on the bunkers, and I agree there, a little bit formulaic. I'd love to see more option around the green,
I
and that's
like
what you're
the
talking
idea
about.
of I like the idea of the right fairway too. What you said,
Yeah,
like that hole would get a lot more interesting. I think to me,
yeah.
I would just, looking at the hole, I would just hit driver every time.
Would you?
Yeah.
Okay, you're a better driver than me, but I would.
I
I
just
just
like
don't.
I think I'd
Yeah,
take the chips around the green, knowing like I'm 20 yards around the green,
yeah. I think it's quite
and
tight up there, Andy. I think it's quite tight on the left as well. Is what I always see when I look at it. If you hit a little pull, this is the way my mind works with the lefts, but it just, you can be kind of like the third hole after a good drive. You can be up against it a little bit. You can run the room pretty quickly there. Um,
maybe
but
as the rough was down, but I hit it right
mm,
and thought it was pretty simple to get up and
yeah,
up and
yeah.
down from right.
I think in the initial period after building, I think they did maybe soften the green or something like that. But I would have loved to. I never played the old hole, Andy, and I'm always thinking about going left off the 15th is such a nice idea, and kind of playing across as well, because then you're getting a different look. And it doesn't bother me if the backdrop to that old hole, which is kind of playing towards the 17 tee, I imagine, isn't so good. Um, and I think a simple golf hole is often a good one. And I mentioned the 18th at St Andrews, but
Or
yeah,
18th at North Berwick.
18th at North Berwick. Yeah, there's so many of them. So many of them. But
I think that's
yeah.
the real thing with 16 and 18 to me is just less is more with them.
Mm,
Like
yeah.
18, it feels like there's more bunkers on 18 than the rest of the golf course. I know
Yeah.
that's not
Yeah.
true, but that's the way it feels when you stand on that tee.
Yeah. I've always thought that. I always thought that it was asking you, in fairness, it's asking you to test a question of execution, like a straight shot. But then I think I wouldn't say my problem with it, but I always thought the green was a little skinny for someone taking on the second shot, and it's very tight down there. There used to be actually out of bounds behind the hole, very, very tight, and I think Colt got rid of that. But it's quite a skinny green. I think it's more designed to almost take a third shot, and I'm not sure what work was done on it. But I think it's a really, really kind of high risk shot if you're coming in with a 3-wood or a 2-iron or whatever. So I agree with you about the bunkering being kind of offhand. I can't remember if it's quite symmetrical or asymmetrical. I agree it's probably over bunkered, but I think as you approach the green, I would love to see something a bit more open and flowing and less skinny. Is how I describe it. And
I
maybe,
do, yeah, I do like the green in the
do you?
sense of like
Yeah.
the way it kind of runs off on each side, like
Okay.
that
Yeah.
narrow green. But I just, it's the bunkers that lead into it. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
But I think that Andy, up around the green, when it falls off again, it kind of, ball doesn't really go anywhere. It's into quick bowls, so
mhm.
you have a very steep incline. So you probably putt or bunt to 7-iron up. But I would like to see it, obviously, in the modern vogue of architecture, flowing off a little bit more. And I appreciate that probably won't happen around there because of concerns for space. It's quite close to a lot of things. It's quite close to clubhouse and whatnot and everything. And I suppose the out of bounds was got rid of for a reason there, and they want to contain things. But when I think about Royal County Down, I think certainly, no matter what you think about 16, 17 or 18, the sheer glory of the golf course is just something that can't be matched anywhere else. Maybe Cypress Point, which I haven't played, might match it for natural setting. Pine Valley might match it for shot value, shot execution, perfection. But Pine Valley is not as natural as Royal County Down. It sits alone. And, we haven't even discussed how good those holes on the Annesley course are behind the fourth hole that Martin Liebert built, those 3 holes. They're really, really good, interesting golf holes. And the Annesley course is a brilliant accompaniment. So many golf courses.
I think it's the best short course in the world.
I think, yeah, so many golf courses that are top tier in America have 2 courses, or, they have 1 course and brilliant practice facilities. But Portmarnock has the Yellow 9. County Down has the Annesley, or the number 2 course. And then Portrush has the Dunluce, and even if, the Valley. And then if you play Enniscrone on the West Coast, I'm pretty sure there's another golf course out onto the left of Enniscrone. So, that's something we do well over here. And that golf course was built. I think the Ladies Club, which came into being not long after County Down came into being, played over that, and George Coombe, our dictator again, was responsible for that. But to have that on your as your second course, and I know a lot of people who go there don't play it, so they're missing out big time. And the same occurs for Portmarnock. I don't think we got to play the Yellow 9 when you were over, but those sort of things are really special. And, if place is busy, you go out and you have some fun with friends. And, and when County Down is such a hard golf course as well, as we've talked about for so long here, and it really is so hard that you need that kind of contrast at County Down, I think. So that's just something else that really keeps it up into the Mount Rushmore bucket of golf courses for me, Andy. I think there's so much good there. But I do think the more I think about it, the simplicity of the greens, and compared to I call it lack of internal intrigue, but that's necessary in County Down. Whereas what Colt did at Portrush with just lovely gentle weaving slopes wouldn't work at County Down. I really think
it'd be too much. It'd be too much. It'd be too wild.
I loved. I think if I had to pick, I'll put you on the spot in a minute. I'll give you 2 seconds to think about it. But if I had to think about my top 3 things about Royal County Down, I'd say the feeling of just hitting your drive on the second and coming over, or even the 11th, the second or the 11th, and the air just coming back into your lungs after you see your ball being okay, or wherever it is, or figuring out if you've a semi-blind shot into the second, or you're blocked out on the right, you've pushed it on 11 or whatever. I think that's really high up there. And I don't think people would probably plump for that, but I do. It's just, and this is from someone who doesn't really love blind shots. So that's special. I love that. I think the 8th hole, as I mentioned, is off the charts for me. And I love thinking about the sheer simplicity of how Colt did that, just by moving one up and then moving the green up and right, and then getting rid of those 2 rudimentary par 3s and giving the world 8 and 9. And then, I haven't really thought of the 3rd, but I said I better come up with 3. I love looking back up the first hole, turning backwards, something you don't do on any other first hole in the world, I don't think. You're always looking forward in life, Andy. You're always looking forward in a round of golf, but I love to look back on the first at County Down. So they're my 3.
Those are your 3. I'll try and go with 3 different ones here.
Okay.
I love the approach to the 6. Everybody talks about 7 and how demanding that is. But to me, the 6 is like a terrifying shot. It's kind of your first one where you're up and exposed. So I think you get used to, you kind of get used to environments on a golf course. And I find it's always hardest the first shot in an environment. And that one, you're up so high. And the green, I think it's the smallest green on the golf course.
It's brilliant.
And it runs off in every direction. It's just an extremely demanding shot. That's a brilliant short 4.
It is a brilliant short 4. Just to interrupt you very quickly, I hit it when I played Pine Valley. I hit it into the bunker in the first, hit it out, and had 50 yards into the first hole. And I was looking at this pitch, and I go, this green is so skinny and falls off everywhere that if I don't hit a really good pitch, I'm screwed. And that is exactly the shot you have into the 6th at Royal County Down as well. You'll hit a 5-iron off the tee and a wedge, and you just got to nail it. And there's so much going on in your head, and it's just brilliant.
And the wind really is just so strong when you're up there. That one, to me, I think the 9th tee shot, it's the obvious one. It's one of the most thrilling shots in all of golf. It's just so beautiful. hitting over that. I think like the thing that kind of surprised me about that hole, after seeing all the pictures, like the stuff that I didn't understand was like how if you push it right, you'll get blind by that dune. Like, and I think that's really cool. And just how all the slope, because that green's built into the dune, all the slope just pushes it so hard left. Like being right there and taking that safe line off the tee is really, it's not a great, it's a bit of a spot of bother. But then left, like you can get yourself in a lot of trouble if you get too far left. Like
you certainly can.
And I think then
what's your number 3? Yeah.
I think just going down into the valley on 13, it's just one of the coolest moments in the round. It's kind of the end of the really epic dunescape area, and it's just such a it's such a gentle. It's not gentle in the sense that it's this extremely hard hole, but it's just such a gentle. You're shielded. You're kind of unexposed, and that gorse, we got it in full bloom, was just like, it's just, I'll never forget that image in my head of Royal County Down, is that valley of gorse, and the 13th just going down in that tunnel. It's so beautiful down there.
But you can really see, Andy, obviously the members, when they play their hat on the Wednesday and the Saturday, and they play so much foursomes because it's so hard.
Yeah.
You know, and like Great Britain and Ireland golf it's a different animal to golf in the States, I really think. It's an acquired taste. We grew up playing it here. We absolutely love it. But I appreciate, might not be for everyone, but there's, you know, score doesn't matter too much. We play matches. And then funnily enough, all our club championships, and I mentioned my pal who won the club championship at Royal County a few weeks ago, but they actually tend to be the reverse. We play 36-hole strokes in most club championships, and we play all our kind of casual matches, but we play these club championships over 36 holes off the back tees at Portmarnock or Royal County Down or Portrush, and they are just absolutely brutal. You know, if you hit one bad drive, you're making an 8 or a 9 or a 10. But I do think it's a different sport, and I think I'd love to hear when people come here, when you meet all these American visitors and people from far away, and I hope they get it, because I think it's a different sport almost to golf in America, and I think that everyone should. One visit is good, and 2 is even better. You know, and you really begin to enjoy these things on repeat plays so much in places like Royal County Down. And there's such a different culture of golf up here. They, you know, they're unchanged in so many ways, and they have this magnificent course to play over. I really hope, first of all, that a lot of people will watch this event. I hope that the weather is good. Søren Kjeldsen won with 2 under in 2015. Yeah. And I was looking back over some of the scores of as you said, about our Irish amateur golf. So they hosted the Irish Amateur Open in, I think it was 2017 or 18, back to back. Remember, I saw Matt Jordan came fourth. He's obviously become quite a good tour player. You know, good players win at these things and come top 4 or 5, but the scores are so hard. And that's why golf over here is molded by that. You know, you can chuck away the scorecard sometimes unless you're playing the Club Championship. But it's a treat. It's a different sport. And I'm glad you guys enjoyed it when you were over here. I know you got pretty bad weather at times, but that's the fun of it. You know, we don't
got an epic day at Royal County Down. You know,
did you?
Okay. It was unbelievable morning. It got a little gnarly at the end of the day, but it was sun was out, and it was beautiful. It was amazing. So, hey, Darragh, thank you for coming on. How do people find you if they want to talk more about Irish golf with you?
I'm on Instagram, Darragh P. Garrahy, so they'll find me on that. And then I'm on Twitter as well under the same name. And I can be always relied upon to be I love it when people want to talk about links golf or anything about the historical nature of Irish golf or GB&I golf or anything to do with amateur golf, really, Andy. That's why I jammed you with the Crump Cup at the start. You know, that's my wheelhouse. I wasn't going to let you out away with that. I know the Solheim Cup is on, but what a week we have. So
lots of cups up for grabs this week.
There is, yeah. And anyway, looking forward to reporting back after Saturday. I can't wait to go up. And I hope you get some time with your coffee in the morning to watch some golf as well.
Oh, I've got the alarm set. It's going to be my wife. My wife's going to be like, what the F are you doing? Why are you getting up?
Egregiously early, I would say.
Yeah.
But it's worth it, Andy.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much, Darragh. We'll talk soon and hopefully see you soon.
Yeah, hopefully see you soon. Thanks, Andy. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Fried Egg Golf Podcast. Big thanks to PJ Clark, editing, producing. He got up, came to work after Aaron Rodgers got his tail kicked, got his ass kicked last night against the 49ers. It's so sad to see Aaron Rodgers struggle as a Bears fan. So anyways, PJ got up. Big thanks to him putting this episode together in short order. Although when he hears this, he might scrap some of it. So anyways, if you haven't yet, check out our pro shop. It's proshop.thefriedegg.com. Meg Atkins is doing a wonderful job stocking that. We've got fall coming up, and I think we have a pretty good fall line coming in there. So be on the lookout there. If I was going to pick out a particular item, I would look at the putter covers. We work with a company called Handcrafted that just has, beautiful putter covers. There's a potato chip green one that I really like that turned out really well. I would check out that. So check out the Pro Shop, and thank you guys for listening and supporting this podcast.